try to figure out the whodunit. We want to be smarter than anyone on the screen.
Yeah.
So we work really hard. And, you know, like often I do say, also when I work with writers or TV or film, how do you want people to feel at the end? Because that's the bit we take away. And I loved a scenario where people can walk away and go, oh, I would have done what that girl did. But I should have done what that girl did, right?
Yeah.
So we really, really measure ourselves.
Welcome back to Real Relationships. I'm Cheryl Muir and we're talking about story today. So if you've ever wanted to share your story, this is for you. Particularly we're talking about the healing power of story, why it's important, and of course how to share yours. I had a really lovely conversation with our guest today, Alison Norrington, who is a storyteller. She's a writer, producer, a consultant for the film and TV industries, and she's also the founder of Storycentral. Alison's worked in the industry for over 25 years and she's worked with SundanceTV, CBS, Walt Disney, Fox International, AMC and the BBC. She is a 2 times TEDx speaker. She's featured on the BAFTA Guru series, and Alison's company Storycentral is a global entertainment studio. They're based in London and they work with filmmakers, writers, publishers, broadcasters and other storytellers on new franchises, story architecture, mythology, planning, audience development and engagement. And Alison is also the founder of Supersize Your Story, and it's an online program that helps writers, producers and beautiful creative minds to develop their concept and develop it to its full potential, with the final goal to pitch to the entertainment industry. There's also a link below to Alison's new online program called An Introduction to Supersize Your Story, and there's an early bird rate before September 30th. Okay, let's get into our conversation with Alison.
Alison, welcome to Real Relationships. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Likewise, I'm so happy to get into it. I know we've been chatting before we hit record. I'm so excited to talk to you. There's so many things I could ask of you. There's so many things that you do. I suppose where I'd like to start is, what is your relationship to story and how has it helped you to understand who you are and understand the world around you?
Oh my, that's a massive question and one I absolutely love. Okay, so, well, listen, you know, I always am a big fan of continually trying to do work on myself, right? And I think there's people that fall into 2 camps, those that do and those that don't. Got no judgment on either side. But I realised for me, there were 2 things that happened when I was quite young, probably under 5. One, there was my mum took me to see Alice in Wonderland at the theatre, and I literally fell down the rabbit hole, right? And I was like, oh my goodness, like these great kind of characters and great stories. So that was very big for me. And a cousin, when I was also under 10, showed me an old movie from, I don't know if it was the 60s or 70s, called The Phantom Toll Booth. And it's this bored American young kid who's stuck at home, and he has this kind of, finds this little kind of mechanical car. And as he drives it, he goes through a pop-up toll booth and turns into an animated character, right? And he steps into this story world. So I've always loved story, like loved it. Even remembering like half term at school, watching all of, I don't know, crazy, like old Elvis movies and stuff like that. And I just love story. And so it's no surprise that my company is now called Storycentral, because everything I do has story at the heart of it. I work across pretty much every medium. I've worked for theme parks. I've done some lovely work for Disney. I do work for film and television and publishing, virtual reality, immersive experiences, theatre plays, like everywhere that story hits. I've been very lucky that I've been able to work in those areas. But story has to be at the heart of that, because without that, it's just stuff, right? There's no point in any of it, because it's absolutely pointless without a narrative arc and a story. So for me, my relationship with story is absolutely every single day without fail. But I also love to find the stories in things too, right? I sit on the train and like try and wonder what people are doing with their day and where they're going. And they're never who you think they are.
I love doing that too. What do you think it is about story that connects us so deeply to each other?
I think that someone said to me years ago, art is life. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of profound. But I think that, you know, if we lived to be 100, if we did, we could never experience all the things in life that might come our way. And I think stories give us the opportunity to put ourselves in imaginary situations and try to get to know ourselves better. How would we react? You know, would I have done this? Would I have done that? How would I feel in that moment? There's a scientific thing that happens when we're actually consuming stories, and it's called grocking, right?
I've never heard of this. I'm fascinated. Go ahead.
I love it. I love a bit of grocking, right? So grocking, Grokking, grocking, right?
Love it.
So we feel quite passive. We're sitting back, cinema, theatre, Netflix, whatever. And it feels quite, we're being quite passive, but we're actually not at all. We're working really hard to fill in the gaps. So if you look at a movie or even a television series, it's a series of pretty much like disconnected scenes, right?
Yeah.
And we do the work in our head. So when I work with writers, I always try to tell them to not fire hose the audience with everything, because we need some space. We need to figure stuff out. And there was quite a big difference. There was a study done a few years ago of traditional, sort of more a little bit old school, really, European cinema and US cinema, right? So with European cinema, we enter a scene early and we leave it late. So if it's a murder scene, we might enter the scene and we see, you know, two people talking, someone drinks down the last bit of whiskey or whatever and put it on the side, pick up the lampshade, we see them walking across, person goes down, right? And they might peel off the black leather glove and leave it on the body. The next scene would possibly be somebody driving a cab wearing a black leather glove. But we've already seen that person. So we've seen the crime. In more kind of like US or Western cinema, we enter a scene late and leave it early. So we do more up here. So we might enter a scene and just see the black leather glove hand, the lamp on the head, and the body goes down. And then we cut to the next scene, which is the guy driving the car in the cab, maybe with one black leather glove. To look at them without any emotion or any expectation of story, they could be really disconnected, right? Just the black leather glove is the thread. But we do all of it. And that's why crime and sci-fi and thrillers, we really lean in. We try to figure out the whodunit. We want to be smarter than anyone on the screen. So we work really hard. And, you know, like often I do say, also when I work with writers or TV or film, how do you want people to feel at the end? Because that's the bit we take away. And I loved a scenario where people could walk away and go, oh, I would have done what that girl did. But I should have done what that girl did, right? So we really, really measure ourselves, not maybe in a harsh way, but we really measure ourselves against story. And we look at the relationships and dynamics of people in story. And I mean, without that, we live in a bubble, right? So for me, it's massive and impactful every single day.
That's so brilliant, and there's so much I could kind of tease out of that and go in many different branches and directions about the benefits of grokking and how that pulls us out of the mundane, connects us to each other. What I'm really curious about is your perspective on the types of story people are choosing to consume, either consciously or unconsciously, not necessarily the medium, whether it's books or film or theatre, but the types of themes that are coming up, whether it's horror, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's romance. Do you think the type of story people are consuming over and over again, does that say something about them, or is it completely unrelated?
I don't think it's unrelated. I think that kind of back in sort of maybe, I don't know, the 1920s, there was a lot of slapsticky romance fun stuff. We had a similar vibe, perhaps late 40s, early 50s, when we came out of the Second World War, right? So I think that there is an overexposure to traumatic material that we love to escape with lighthearted comedy, romance, fun stuff. When COVID first hit in March, 2020, I was being pitched so many stories about pandemic. Everybody's going to want to watch that. Like, we're living that stuff. We don't
want to watch it.
But from a publishing perspective, psychological thrillers are huge.
Yeah.
You go into a bookshop or even go into like a grocery store, a supermarket, and look at the top 20, you're going to see a sea of very like photographic, dramatic book covers with very big text on the front of that. And the psychological thrillers are massive right now, especially in publishing, but also when we're looking about what's happening on Netflix, thrillers and psychological thrillers, and also these kind of drama documentaries about identity. Right, we've got the Inventing Anna that's happening right now. There's the Tinder swindler thing, and it's almost like I feel people are not consciously trying, but fascinated with some sense of survival. And I don't mean on a sort of like a hands-on way, but mental survival. So we don't want to watch stories about pandemic, but we do want to immerse ourselves in stories of people responding to adverse situations and how to use our inner mental and emotional pillars to like propel us and keep us steady through a bit of a traumatic moment, perhaps. So zombie movies are totally out right now. You know, nobody wants that. We're not into the zombies anymore. We've moved on.
No apocalyptic stuff on the screen. So it sounds like then that the themes and patterns that we're seeing in story in various different mediums are very much driven by what's going on in the world, but it's not completely, it's not directly correlated. And it's not, we're in a pandemic, let's watch a pandemic. We're in a pandemic, it's very, very challenging. Let's watch stories about people overcoming adversity. Have I understood that correctly?
I think absolutely, yes, because I would say we want and need our stories to be inspirational and aspirational, right? So I had a writer say to me last week, with what's going on in the world, how can I continue to write my kids' television show? And it's a hard question to answer, but the point is, things pass, things will pass. And I know it's horrendous, I'm not belittling anything, but things will pass, and we still need hope and faith. And even those psychological stories, those thrillers, they still leave you with a sense of hope and faith. You have to have that up somehow at the end, right? Because, I mean, with the pandemic happened, we all have different kind of sense of fallout of what's happened there. But evolution and transition means things do continue, maybe not as we want them to. So, yes, we can go dark, but we still need inspirational, aspirational characters that show us the way forward.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'd love to switch gears for a second and talk about some of the material that you've covered in terms of romantic relationships, both in your novels and your on-screen, on-stage adaptations. What themes and patterns do you see cropping up a lot in some of your stories about love and romance?
I was quite horrified when I found, actually. I was like, oh no, I'm writing about that. So I have tended to write stories of female, very strong female characters, right? So Doris Day type characters, but maybe not as ditzy, right? But she was always a bit ballsy, Doris Day character, and a bit kind of Carrie Bradshaw, but again, not so kind of edgy. The women who mess up, make bad, stupid decisions, right? Let's have a show of hands for that one. Like,
everyone.
Bad, stupid decisions, but also not overly romantic with this, you know, knight in shining armor hero rescuing you, right? So very much about kind of goofing it up, messing it up, getting it wrong, but always relying on something inside with this strong core that allows the characters to continue to push through. So it's never like the super hunky, you know, muscled guy that she's going to end up with. It's someone that she would have a beautiful, genuine, authentic connection with, that they can learn and grow together as a couple. I think, you know, it's not a Disney princesses. That's just so unrealistic. My themes have been stuff like that. My second book, I found out about something called the Hague Convention. Actually, a friend got caught up in this. So the law is something like, if, say, for example, we go on vacation, right, and we meet a guy from that country and we fall in love with that guy, right? So very exotic. We move to his country. We have children with him. A few years down the line, he's completely not into it. This happened to my friend, as she couldn't return back to UK with her kids. because they were born to a national person of that country in his country. And the Hague Convention prevented her from bringing them back, right? Even though he didn't care about any of the situation, it could have been turned somewhere else. So my second book really focused in on a woman who got herself caught up in a situation like that, and how her sister came to the rescue in the end.
Yeah, beautiful.
So it's very much about real, authentic connections, love, if you want, rather than this, you know, cowboy comes trotting down over the mountain with his Stetson on and no shirt kind of thing. That's not reality. I don't go that way.
I love that your stories sound based in reality, grounded in reality, aspirational for sure, and also like real life. You know, this happens.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. If someone's watching this, and you know that whole thing that writers do, I write as well. I'm writing a YA novel at the moment, and this thing that writers do of going, oh, I write, but I don't think I'm a writer. Only writers do that. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
Only writers do that. Someone that's, you know, working in construction or working at a bakery doesn't go, I don't think I'm a writer. They're not even thinking about it. It's a writer's thing. But if they're watching this, what would you say to them? What would you say to them around why their story is important and why the world needs what it is that they feel called to share?
Well, I think, you know, some of the most amazing stories come from the everyday people, right?
Yes.
I mean, like, I can tell you time and time again, I've struck up a conversation with somebody that I felt I had absolutely nothing in common with. And oh my goodness, you know, the revelations that come out. And like I said earlier, none of us can experience everything. But the everyday people working in the bakeries, working in construction, oh my goodness, like if we're looking at survival stories, it's all around us every day, you know, looking at the celebrity life, and they've got all the money and the lifestyle. Of course, there are stories there. But it's the everyday people that I believe have the stories that never get told. Because they get overlooked, or we get overlooked, right? We are those people, right? It's not them and us for sure. We get overlooked, and so many. I think as much as people being storytellers, they need to learn to listen, right? And to be a good storyteller, you have to be a good listener. And I think for to find an opportunity for these people who don't believe they're writers, to just have a chance to be listened to. And I would say have the confidence, just get it out there. You know, I mean, writing is a craft for sure, but it's absolutely one that can be learned. So just keep doing it. You're a writer if you're writing. Simple as that, right?
I love the simplicity of that. So it sounds like the permission to be heard and the permission to tell our own story, and to know that our story, whoever we are, whatever we've been through, it has value no matter what.
Yes. I mean, you know what it's like. You go out with the girls and you go out for an evening, have a few cocktails, and, you know, the amount of stories that come out just in a small group of people. And I think men don't have the opportunity so much to have that, like, real dialogue with their friends and colleagues. And just to be able to listen, give people space just to listen. And, you know, if you're stuck for ideas, just get out there and sit in a coffee shop and earwig to the conversations around you.
Tune in and see what's going on over there and what they're talking about. And, there's so much. There's so many different things that I could ask you. One thing I do want to make sure I ask is the question that I'm asking everyone for season 2 of Real Relationships, which is a big question. And the question is, if we were to have a healthier relationship with ourselves, with the world around us, and with each other, what would become possible for us, both as individuals and as a group of people?
If we were to have a healthier relationship with ourselves, I would say we could possibly become a little bit limitless, right? I think we stand in our way so much, right? And people do that. And, you know, it's always the negative voice, you know, you do something good and then the negative is like, what do you think you're doing? Why do you think you can do that? Like, if we could learn to put that crap to one side and just focus and do what we want to do, follow our dreams, right? Follow our heart. If we could connect on that level, and I know it's hard, we've all got crazy stuff going on. The world's a weird place right now. But I always think of having this like invisible force field around us, so that we can listen and empathize, but also protect ourselves. Because people will always need great stories. People always need examples of hope and faith and inspiration, like whatever. And sometimes maybe now more than ever, people always are going to need that. So if we could stop standing in our own damn way, right, and just center in on what we feel we need in the moment, and to be able to kind of execute on that. It's a big statement to do, of course, but just maybe a little bit of meditation every day, just a few minutes out, just waking up and not picking up the phone as the first thing you do. You fall into the world of chaos. You know, some people would have like bedside journals where they write down their first thoughts first thing in the day. Got friends who do that in the middle of the night as well. But just take some time out, go for a walk, get out. Just remember like the stuff that's important. And I'm saying it like I'm doing it all the time, but I'm not doing it all the time.
It's okay for us not to be perfect, right? It's all a journey. And it sounds like, I love what you said there, Alison, about the world always needs story, no matter what's happening, and especially now. Especially now. I mean, you know, looking at the situation now, and even looking at the situation with Trump, right, when Trump was running, I wished he was running, but anyway, he was running. He's not running away.
I know, I wish he was running. But the narrative, right, now I had friends on social media who absolutely thought he was the best thing ever, which I personally was horrified at. And I used to look at the two lines of narrative happening around pro and anti-Trump. They had the same passion and they had the same sense of for good as each other, right? And that's the power of being able to run a story or a narrative around something even like a presidential election, right? And it really polarizes people. Now, to do that in a positive way, obviously Trump was not positive, but do that in a positive way, and to be able to cross a bridge over those two narratives, you know, talk to the people that think the opposite of what you think without it being a conflict, just to be able to keep building bridges rather than walls, I think. Right. But I mean, that goes for anything, climate change, flat earthers, like, you know, the list is endless. Racism, feminism. It doesn't have to be a polarized them and us on either side. The storytellers, I mean, that's why some great documentaries are made, to create that bridge of understanding how the other people don't think the same as you. We have to try to do that as storytellers. Otherwise, the divide gets wider. But again, not an easy task.
No, it's a huge task, and story really does bring us together. And there's a lot we could say about films and books and movies and music, but that feeling of us all being immersed in the same story, whether it is a book, film, whatever it might be, it does bring us together, and there is a common thread. And I love what you said there about the whether it's a narrative on an election campaign or whatever might be going on, the passion on both sides is the same. Right. Maybe that passion brings us all together as well, even if we believe different things.
To fundamentally who we are as humans, right? That's the power of a brilliant narrative, that it touches our heart and it kind of connects deeper than a superficial layer. So, I mean, you know, we spoke about Myers-Briggs earlier, and I love working with archetypes, right? But archetypes as our characters, but also archetypes as our audiences. How are our audiences behaving? What do they love to do? How can we bridge a gap between that side and that side based on something they love? So, I mean, it's very deep, actually, but to be able to create a movement around a narrative, so we don't have one hero saving the day, right? You have one hero saving the day in a story, the hero gets killed off and everyone's left hopeless. Movement, I mean, look at Zelensky, that fucking brilliant president of Ukraine. It's like something out of Game of Thrones, right? Could you see Boris Johnson or Macron or any of them actually standing at the front lines in battle gear with their people? They'd have their suitcases and they'd be checking out of the airport, right?
True. It's true.
We do know that's what happened. But like Volodymyr Zelensky, fantastic guy, like what a hero, but he's a hero because he's standing with his people. He's not doing the them and us. And he's energized them and given them confidence to fight for what's important. And that's what happens with the power of a collective rather than one hero.
And that's leadership. And it sounds like in your stories as well, you really create that. You're not creating the hero that swoops in. You're creating, you're just explaining what happens in life is that when we stand together, when we can be leaders and inspire other people, that's when real change happens, rather than one person being on the throne or the platform preaching to everybody else.
Right, exactly. Like we all mess up, don't we? Like it's a fundamental human trait. We're all going to mess up. And how to like move on after that. Well, you know, not to beat someone over the head by messing up, but to be able to understand how to move on from that situation. As you said earlier, it's not a perfect world. None of us are perfect. How do we navigate that? And I think we do that through a story. So for me, it's every single day, right?
That feels like a beautiful place to end. I could talk to you all day, but I thank you so much for your time. All your information is below so people know where to find you. Alison, thank you so much.
Thank you so much too. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.